Our case numbers continue to exceed what they have been in past years, and that's certainly related to the growth of the county, the buildings that I see every day as I drive home that are coming up kind of like the phoenix out of the ground. So case numbers are up. We're still, I think, what I characterize in transition with the Justice Support Center, going, as I said, from a law enforcement model to civilian model. And Phil Golly and his crew are doing an exceptional job of supporting the courts and getting us information that we need and the monitoring program. But as I said, it's still a work in progress. Crosse, I think as you know, is back up and running. We have a new director, and my understanding is that they're going to be swearing in 5 new advocates within the next couple of weeks. There are plans, I know, also to get the word out to some of the outlying communities. I plan on speaking at my local church to get that word out, again, to encourage advocates from what I characterize as out county, Richmond, Baldwin, areas of the county. As Ken mentioned, we're also in budget time and trying to look at our budgets. I think the courts tend to be probably one of the smaller budgets in terms of overall impact on the levy, et cetera, but we're working with Rebecca Rohan and with Christie relative to the court's budget, and I think I can safely say there's not going to be much change in our budgets. We remain relatively stagnant. In terms of current needs buildings, I think I'll start with what tragically happened over the weekend relative to the homicide on the Apple River, and now how that's playing out in the courts. It's a very high profile case. I think we had every major media network or outlet here, plus some national interest. It's a case where certainly there are many victims and folks who are interested in the case. The case is currently assigned to Judge Waterman, who sits in a courtroom that does not have access to the jail. And I say that because the initial appearance, he conducts his initial appearances by Zoom, so inmates remain in the jail, but that is probably the only hearing that he's going to be able to do by Zoom. The balance of all of his hearings generally will be in person. So I think I have made my point in terms of transporting that defendant through the public hallways with a lot of attention, a lot of victims, a lot of media, and how that's going to be coordinated. Now, I guess I can say thankfully Judge Vlack is still on vacation next week, and so Judge Waterman will be using his secure courtroom to conduct the preliminary hearing, which is really the first evidentiary hearing. But after that, when we're fully staffed with 4 judges, it creates that practical problem. The evolution of the building project, I guess I would start out by saying that when I was asked to join the building committee, I kind of laid out what our current situation is and what I was best able to project going forward. Well, current situation is we have 6 court officials, 4 judges, 2 commissioners. 5 of those court officials deal with people in custody routinely. We only have 2 secure courtrooms. The other 2 courtrooms on the bookends, as well as the commissioner's space, are not secure in terms of access to the jail. So that was one of the first points that I made. I also made the point that given St. Croix County's growth, I think it's a matter of time until we are eligible for a 5th judge, and I'll even venture to say a 6th judge, just given our growth and given the increase in cases, and we have no room for them. We also have no room for visiting judges. It's not frequent, but occasionally cases from St. Croix are assigned out to judges from Polk or from Dunn because of conflicts or other reasons that the 4 judges here can't hear a case. We have no room for a visiting judge unless one of us does not have a calendar. So if a judge wants to come in and hear a case in St. Croix, we have to vacate one of our courtrooms in order to accommodate that. So that was the current need. When I talk about expansion of the number of judges, at least I've been told that within the next few years, foreseeable future, St. Croix's population will equal that of Eau Claire. and potentially exceed Eau Claire. And I say that because Eau Claire has 6 judges currently. 6 judges, a court commissioner, and a family court commissioner, so 8 judicial officials. So when the building was originally planned and designed, I think you all know it was designed for 8 courtrooms, 4 here on the first floor, 4 on the second floor. There wasn't a lot of detail about the build out of the commissioner's space, but with 6 court officials, we pretty much understood that that would work for our immediate needs. Our first meetings with the architects, we made it very clear that we wanted all 8 courtrooms with access to the jail. The redesign upstairs as well as the design downstairs. We also made it very clear that as long as we have 4 judges, we're not splitting up. We're going to stay on the same floor. There are so many practical reasons that makes sense and works for us. We're collegial. There's not a day goes by that I'm not in every one of my colleagues' chambers, sometimes on a moment's notice, some on a planned, but that collegiality, that community that we've established as judges, we've maintained and will continue to maintain. The first iteration then that we saw eliminated Judge Waterman's courtroom from having access to the jail. And the reason being is that, as I understand, there is an IT closet in our hallway on the second floor that to move it would be cost prohibitive. And so we were unable then to get access to his courtroom, so we figured, okay, 7 courtrooms with access to the jail would still accommodate our needs going forward. And if we ever got to 8 judges, or I should say when we would get to 8 judges, my guess is that we would have dedicated calendars. In other words, judge would be assigned strictly to criminal, judges assigned strictly to civil or family, so we could probably then manage and massage that in a way that would accommodate. I think you also know that the current plan is for the clerk of courts, register of probate, the juvenile clerk to all be on this floor in a remodeled section across the hallway. So that was the first iteration, and we said, okay, that will work. And again, it made practical sense because at least our understanding was that the first floor would be gutted, remodeled. The 4 judges would move down to those 4 courtrooms, and then the remodeling on the second floor could begin. The last iteration now that we've seen, based on what I understand to be some overruns in the budget, is to do nothing on the second floor and to only build out 2 courtrooms on the first floor. That gives us 6 spaces for 6 court officials. That's the reality, at least where I understand where we're at. There's no plans to do anything with the commissioner's spaces. If you've been up to the commissioner spaces, they were never designed to be hearing rooms. We carved them out as the years went by, and at least the family court commissioner space has significant issues with security. The commissioner space, while it has access to the hallway, litigants sit elbow to elbow. There's minimal space in those rooms, and those 2 gentlemen do what I characterize some of the more challenging, emotionally charged hearings. Family court, small claims. Mr. Heckman does a lot of our preliminary hearings. So the space, at least, is challenging, and there are no plans to modify that. We made it clear at that last meeting that the 4 judges are going to remain together. So we'll continue to operate on the second floor with 2 courtrooms without access to the jail, which means, and I've already alerted the sheriff, that they'll be transporting prisoners then down the hallways because we're not going to split up. The commissioner in all likelihood then would be assigned to one of the new courtrooms downstairs so that he can do his secure hearings. But that is our plan, and we've made that, I think, clear to anyone who is involved in this planning process. The other thing that now I'm at least questioning is whether it makes sense to move the clerk of courts, register and probate, and juvenile clerk to the first floor if the court's going to remain on the second floor for the foreseeable future. So that's the update. That's where we're at in the evolution of this project. We would like to meet again, hopefully with the architects and others, to talk about this, but that's where we're at.
And if I could just add on to what Judge Needham had said, I think the important point for the elected officials is that it all boils down to money. So we have a plan for 8 courtrooms, all that could have access directly to the jail, but it does become a financial issue. So the amount of money currently allocated for the project puts us here, and we have a plan that can expand out, but it does take additional resources. So if I come back to you at some point in the future and ask for additional resources or future KIP projects to finish these projects out in the next few years, you understand where that's coming from.
And Judge Waterman, Judge Nordstrand are both here as well, and I don't know if they want to supplement anything I've shared. Judge Waterman.
Judge Waterman, before you speak, just to pick up on what the administrator said, Supervisor Leaf and I are on the building committee, and so we've got a lot of different entities of the county board that are interested in this. We just met as a committee of the whole and did the KIP a couple of days ago, all of us. And after the fact, I thought about the fact that maybe we should have considered that build out for someone in the future years, like 2025 or something like that, and had that as one of the items in the KIP. But that was all, of course, designed prior to the timing of all this just didn't make that work out the way it could have worked out. But we may all want to consider that from our perspective here at the PPJ and what that means to the courts and what we can do about it. And of course, Supervisor Leaf and I will be at the building committee in about a week and a half or so and can bring this to their attention and see if some of the ideas that Judge Needham has brought up are conceivable, particularly perhaps a meeting of the interested parties with the architects to see if any, there's time for any second thoughts, and if so, what can be done. Judge Waterman, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. I wholeheartedly agree with Judge Needham's comments. I think they were spot on. I currently sit in courtroom 4, which does not have the secured access. And I can say the practice of bringing prisoners from the elevator into the public hallway, through the public entry to the courtroom, through the vestibule, past the gallery where the public sits, into their seats is undesirable. In fact, it's dangerous. And it's not limited to the high-profile cases that we infrequently get. This is a practice that happens daily. And any time that a prisoner is exposed to the public, I think a risk exists, because oftentimes that prisoner harbors or is the object of a lot of contempt, anger, and resentment. It could be an angry neighbor, a jealous boyfriend, angry father or mother. Sometimes the outbursts can be unpredictable, and it also puts the public in the middle, and law enforcement, who has to control the situation, protect the prisoner. You know, I mitigate it as best I can by using the video system, but criminal defendants have a statutory right to be present in the courtroom. And that's not something that I, as a judge, can overrule. It's their choice, whether they appear by video or appear in the courtroom. And obviously, most of the time, they want to be in the courtroom to sit with their lawyers so they can confer with their counsel. So I just mentioned this to build on what Judge Needham said. It's not the high-profile case, it's the daily case. In fact, come up to my courtroom at 8:30 and you'll witness it for yourself. It happens every day. And I just have been thankful that the outbursts that we have had have not hurt anybody, at least not that I know of. The sheriff can probably talk much more about what happens out in the hallway after I see it in the courtroom. But it is a risk, and it is something that I think should take serious consideration.
Judge Nordstrom.
And I would also echo what both judges have said. The one thing that we focus on the security issue, and I think Judge Waterman just focused on another issue that's important, and that is when we have people that are appearing by video downstairs during intake, in some counties, the public defenders are down in the jail with them. In other words, sitting next to them and being able to advise them, you know, when they're, you can't believe how the folks want to talk. They want to say stuff, they want to tell me why it's all wrong and all, you got it wrong, Judge, and all this stuff. And the public defenders have to try from upstairs at the table to make them stop talking. Sometimes effectively, sometimes not, or to give them advice, or to ask them questions. So they really can't ask them questions. They can't get information from them during intake. So having them in the courtroom allows the attorney to effectively counsel the person they're representing. And I think that's important to keep in mind too. So it's a balancing act. We put them on video because of a security issue in branches 1 and 4 particularly. But at the same time, and we also have, as I said, in some counties the public defenders choose to go down into the jail. I know in Barron County, when I've been up there, you see them on the video and the public defender is sitting next to the defendant in jail. That's just not the way they do it. We can't make them do it a particular way. That's their choice. So anyway, that's just another thing to understand about the importance of the security translating into in-court presence, translating into an ability for defendants to speak to their lawyer.
Are there any questions from the supervisors? Administrator Witt?
Yeah, I just think it's great input to have, and particularly for the building subcommittee members. So as we start looking at the alternatives, because when the bids go out in November and really the February bid package, that's the last big bid package, if those bids are favorable, we will have additional monies, and then determining which items start being added back into the project are crucial. So the judges may get to the first floor sooner than they think, but it really depends on the bids that come in February.
Great, thank you. Any questions from any of the supervisors?
No, I just think that what you said about having, our next meeting and having everyone there would be, I mean, there's ways to figure this out, I'm sure.
So Bob, one last thing.
Judge Renson?
I happened to be at the building committee at Judge Needham's request last time when we heard about the cuts. One thing to consider is it's possible that for less, if we need to save money now, let's just say for the sake of argument that building out new courtrooms on the first floor is very expensive, and we don't have enough money to do it now. We could look at how much does it cost to provide secure access on the second floor, and how much does it really cost to move the IT device and create those secure courtrooms upstairs as compared to, if the plan is ultimately that we're going to do that in some fashion, maybe we could look at a middle ground where we create some security up there. We build out the bottom floor first. A couple of judges move down here temporarily while that's happening. We see how much it really costs. I asked the last meeting, how much does it really cost to move the IT room? There wasn't a number. They don't know. They know what it costs to put it there, the total cost, $200,000-$300,000, I think. But they don't know what it would cost to actually just move it. So I think there's as Bob suggests, there's ways to talk about these things, and maybe we can get to, because ultimately we do want secure courtrooms all around, if at all possible, for Branch 4 as well as Branch 1. So just an idea.
Our next item, I think, is largely non-controversial, but I'll ask the county administrator or the sheriff to quickly comment on what it is.
It's designating where the dispatch center for St. Croix County is. It's St. Croix County. It's for a grant. We have to tell the state who dispatches for us. In northern Wisconsin, the counties do the dispatching. In other parts of the state, there's combined dispatch centers, so it's really more related to them.
Are you seeking a vote
A recommendation to approve. It'll be forwarded then to the county board.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion recommending this?
I move to make the motion to approve this resolution designating the public safety answering point for St. Croix County is here.
And a second? Supervisor Adams seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. No, there's nobody. It's approved. I know, I was looking at it when I did that. Okay, the sheriff's update. Sheriff Knutson, you've had a very calm last week, I know.
Yeah, it's a little bit hectic. My discussion today on the incident from the weekend is going to still be very kind of like what I gave to the media. We want to be sensitive to any information that anybody might be listening to that's not out there yet. I know we have the judges that are in here that will be one presiding over, others that may be involved in some form, so I won't go into too much, other than, again, kind of a recap from the weekend, and that the stabbing, when it came in at about 3:45 on Saturday, we ended up, 5 individuals were stabbed on the river. One was deceased, and we transported all them out. The one went to Lakeview, where he was pronounced deceased. 2 were flown out to Regions, and 2 were driven by ambulance. 1 went to Regions, 1 went to United, but ended up at Regions. 2 have since been released, when 2 are still at Regions. So we ended up with a response from 11 different agencies, and part of the large response was the victims. Also, a large response was we still had not found the subject that had done it, and that was about an hour later when we did locate him with the help of a witness that had seen a photo and alerted us to his presence. So, and he was taken into custody without incident. And then the long work began of trying to piece this together, what took place, the timeframes, the information we had, witnesses, still sending officers and investigators to each of those. That had to be tended to. Each hospital room had to have somebody. The deceased had to have somebody. The incident at the river had to have somebody. And we still had the rest of the county to take care of too. So we had 11, like I said, 11 agencies, fire, EMS, law enforcement. A number from within the county came to assist. Washington County came over. Polk County came down. And obviously the air ambulances that responded as well out of Regions. Terry ran off a couple numbers on how hectic that was. So we compared last week's 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock dispatch numbers. Last week, on the 23rd, we had 7 911 calls and 45 total phone calls. The day of the incident, we had 38 911 calls and 194 total phone calls. And that was from witnesses, that was from media, that was from officers calling. We paged out our ERU team. Radio transmissions. On the 23rd, we had 171, and on the 30th, we had 492. So the dispatch center was extremely busy. They did a wonderful job down there. First responding officers did a wonderful job. We deployed the comm van and utilized that, which was extremely beneficial. Still working on some connectivity issues for getting some service, some cell service, getting the computers going. So the first appearance was on Monday, and as you heard from the judges, it was a packed courtroom. So I anticipate, as I mentioned to department heads yesterday, that I consider this to be one of the larger, most viewed cases we'll have in some time. So it will impact potentially workflows within the building on those days with media, with interested people, with victims and witnesses. So,
Could I just interrupt and ask, do you anticipate anything that this committee or the county board will need to do on an expedited basis to in any way assist or provide for anything else as a result of this case?
well, there will, as all of these large incidences, the support is appreciated, but the expectation that this will impact budgets. There will be equipment, there will be manpower, overtime, maybe rooms unused that will be used, overflow areas that may impact certain throughout work days. So, in talking with Patty on maybe a larger item purchased as part of our case evidentiary. So Administrator Witt has also lent his support on us moving forward on some of those things. So there will be those things that you will see directly. We are going to kind of parse out what is going into this case itself. We'll be keeping track of overtime equipment, so we're going to see what that's going to have on the overall budget. But at the end of the day, we want it done right, so we're going to do what we can. But we'll be doing a debrief tonight for the emergency services folks. I don't know if in Richmond, and I don't know if any Deer Park folks got down, but so we've put that out. I anticipate a large response from that. So any questions on that incident that I could possibly answer?
Any questions?
I'm cursed with mics this week. Just thank you again, and I think I'm glad you're doing a debrief, and I also think I worry about mental health. I always do that. I always say that to all of you, and keeping yourselves okay, because this is an intense situation, and it's always hard. I think you'd think, who do I know that's on the river when this happens? So I think just being mindful of all of your crew's, emotional well-being too.
Supervisor Adams?
And Sheriff, I'd like to compliment you on your presence with the media. I did watch you on TV, and you were very calming, very direct, and it just gave the impression that things were under control. So thank you for that.
Thank you. So then we got a concert this weekend in Somerset. So that'll be Saturday night. They anticipate about 10,000 people. We're preparing for that. Not that we have a whole lot of time to prepare for that, but we are. Thank goodness it's only a one-nighter, with the gates opening at 5:30 and hopefully traffic leaving at midnight. So that will be an incident we'll be watching as well. Again, I hope that goes off without, we don't need anything more happening. So on the good news, National Night Out, Tuesday night. We attended 8 National Night Out events. 5 of those, we had canine demos. ComVan was out at a couple of them. So we got out into the public and some meet and greets, and a lot of kids got to see a lot of dogs. So that was a good night for a lot of people. And we will also be doing, on that public outreach, we're doing our Shop with a Cop. That's August 31st. A little bit about that. We team up with Salvation Army and Grace Place, and we reach out to schools, and they notify us of some individuals that they believe would be good recipients of jumping on board and getting to do the Shop with a Cop. So I think we had maybe 80 last year, 80 kids from throughout the county. So again, this year it's August 31st. We start at the Services Center in Richmond. That's kind of our home base, and we shuttle kids to and from the Walmart, and they get their shopping done for school. So looking forward to that as well.
And people can donate, right?
And people can donate, yes, and all of that is on donations. And one of our larger donators is, of the many, but one of the larger ones is Norflex. And they're a big supporter of this, and we thank them for that. So we did a little thing in the spring for the summer for some of the kids, and now it's back to school, and we're used to doing the Shop with a Cop in the winter for Christmas. There'll probably be some of that as well. Hudson does one of those, but we're kind of moving it up for those that may need some more school supplies and clothes and some of those essentials. So staffing, we have one spot open in patrol. We started a person this week. Dispatch 2 down, and the jail is 2 down. So we are still very much in much better shape than we were 1 year ago. So.
Are there any other questions for the sheriff? I hope I'm speaking for the group when I say next that in July for our meeting, we were hosted by the sheriff and Jim Ellsbury, our facilities director, in our annual inspection of the jail, and and the command vehicle. And I think that we were all quite impressed with the cleanliness and the professionalism, and all the legal things that were required were certainly met with the rosters and that sort of thing. So thank you, Sheriff, for all your efforts and that of your staff in that regard. Any other comments? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is Justice Support Services Pretrial Data Update, and I'll call on Phil Galley, the director of that. And Phil, maybe you could also add any field trips you've taken in the last week and some new ideas you might have in mind.
Sure. Thank you. So just quickly, everybody in front of them should have 2022 pretrial data from the first 2 quarters. I'm going to actually have Shelby Hilden, our supervisor in that department, talk about it. She prepared this report, so I thought it was appropriate for her to talk a little bit about it. But before she does that, we did, 2 weeks ago, the Justice Services team went down to La Crosse County to observe them for the day and see how they run their operations. Their justice support pretrial is a little bit different. It's through their Department of Health and Human Services, and they've been operating under that model for probably close to 20 years, I think. It was a great day. We learned a lot, some things that we hope to implement moving forward. So that was really great experience. Okay, I'm going to pass it off to Shelby now.
Thank you. I'll keep this pretty brief. I've prepared this data. You'll note if you've seen data in years past, we decided to present quarterly data instead of monthly data. And in the first 2 charts, we have pretrial clients separated by supervision level, simply drug testing, remote breath testing, GPS. And you'll also note an other section that includes folks that are ordered to things like phone check-ins, court-ordered testing. Some are ordered a single contact with the Justice Support Center in hopes of connecting those folks with resources. Folks that are in warrant status for under a year, and those that may be ordered to some sort of Justice Support Center supervision but are still in custody. In the chart on the lower left, you'll see some data about the number of pretrial clients that we do have on our caseload. Below that, drug testing is certainly a large part of the Justice Support Center. We case manage pretrial clients to include drug testing and whatever else is ordered by the courts, but we also collect drug tests for the treatment court program and the diversion program, so those numbers are listed there as well. In about the middle of that chart, I wanted to draw maybe a little of attention to verbal warnings, in-house reports, and bond reports. and comparisons from Q1 to Q2. We saw a significant increase in the number of verbal warnings and in-house reports given to clients for some level of noncompliance with bond conditions, and then a decrease in the number of bond reports. Now what that means is verbal warnings are maybe given by a case manager in some sort of minor issue, such as if a person tests on the remote breath unit something like 10 minutes late and they pass their test. That would be an opportunity for a verbal warning and a discussion with that person. In-house reports may happen in an instance of an individual's first positive test. An in-house report would be generated, and that would also be an opportunity for the case manager to offer resources to that individual. And then finally, we get to bond reports, which would be for, I guess, higher level noncompliance, things like multiple positive tests, missed tests, and things of that nature. Below that, you'll note the public safety assessments completed. There were only 9 completed in Q1 because we started doing those at the end of March. We completed 114 public safety assessments in Q2. Those are assessments that are done on felony level individuals that are in custody at the time of their initial appearance. Through the help of our dispatch, we're able to pull criminal histories and complete a public safety assessment on those folks to give us an idea of the person's potential for appearing at future court appearances or potential new criminal arrests. And that brings me down to the bottom of that chart, and then what's also reflected on the right-hand side of the page are outcome measures for Q2. We tracked any folks that were ordered to pretrial monitoring, so only folks in a pretrial state that are ordered to drug testing, remote breath testing, what have you, with the Justice Support Center. We found that we had an appearance rate of 88.7%. An arrest-free rate of 94.1%, and a violent arrest-free rate of 99.2%, which I think are great numbers, but I would also like to note that the folks that this data is obtained from are only the folks in pretrial status who are ordered to some sort of drug testing, GPS monitoring, things like that. And I think one could make an argument that those are also perhaps high-risk folks. If we were to include data from all persons in a pretrial state, those numbers would likely be better.
Yeah, if I could just add to that real quick, those outcome measures that Shelby just highlighted, those are absolutely in line with the national averages. So data suggests that those, what we're doing is working in terms of, again, it's kind of a crude measure, and they're just 3 outcomes, but that's really encouraging. We talked a little bit about that yesterday.
All right, and then on the next page, I did want to reflect, since drug testing is still a large part of what we do, I wanted to reflect what substances we were finding in these positive drug tests. As you can see, THC is still a leader, and I want to note that that's not necessarily this is the number of positive drug tests. THC is in a person's system for a long time, so we have a larger number of those. It's not necessarily indicative of any continued use. I also represented opiates and fentanyl separately due to the recent focus on fentanyl use. As you can see, in Q1, we had 3 positive fentanyl tests and 10 in Q2, so that's certainly something that we're going to continue to watch. And I wanted to note, too, that one test in here could be reflected in several different categories. So, for instance, if an individual was positive for THC and ETG, which is alcohol, by the way, that person would be reflected in both bar charts. Finally, at the bottom, I wanted to compare some data from July of 21 to July of 22. I should note that in July of 2021, we were dialing, there was a process employed to dial back pretrial monitoring in order to prepare for the upcoming transition. But I thought it was worth noting that the number of individuals ordered to drug testing, remote breath testing, GPS, et cetera, has roughly tripled. And then you'll see in the other column, in July of 21, we see 136 people in this area, and in July of 22, there are 30. This is likely due to folks that were in warrant status for a very long time, folks that we carried over in the transition, and those folks have been moved to a separate category now, which is what accounts for the difference in those two charts. Lastly, I just wanted to speak very briefly about our case management services. This type of work is not easy to show statistically, but I want everyone to know that case managers are readily available to assist pretrial folks with supportive services. We've helped defendants with a wide range of referrals and assistance with things like signing up for Badger Care, obtaining government cell phones, in and outpatient treatment, connection with local support groups, AANA, employment through workforce resource, referrals to St. Croix County Behavioral Health, and then of course, day-to-day general help with criminal justice system navigation. We believe that supporting these individuals will not only lead to better pretrial outcomes for these folks, but better outcomes for them as a whole. Lastly, I have another data point that I didn't include in this report. I have what we call law enforcement referral numbers. So in some cases, we may contact law enforcement if an individual has a potential to be taken into custody. So we're talking about a lot of our folks on GPS where there's some sort of victim concern or some sort of high-risk noncompliance, such as somebody with a felony OWI that's testing very high positives on their remote breath test, and we can't bring them back into compliance. In quarter one, we had 5 instances where we contacted law enforcement, and in quarter two, we had 21 instances where we contacted law enforcement with the intent of seeking help with public safety in those matters.
Are there any questions from the supervisors? I would just make an observation, and I'm going to ask Judge Needham if he could also give his observation about this. But it just strikes me that over the past, I'm just going to say, 3 to 4 months, we've had some rather positive things occurring in Justice Support Services in many, many different ways. But Judge Needham, could you comment? Is Justice Support Services meeting your needs?
Yes, and maybe in some respects exceeding our expectations. And it starts with leadership, and we have now, I think, a good leader of that particular program. The pretrial assessments that we receive for intake, so any day at 1 o'clock, if we've got people who are charged with felonies, Phil's group will give us an assessment, and it's objectively scored, it's evidence-based, it doesn't require interviews, it's simply a tool that we use then to decide, is this somebody who we should require bail of, is this somebody who we should set special conditions on for bond. And so the district attorney gets a copy, the public defender gets a copy, the court gets a copy, and it really has helped narrow and inform our bond decisions, whereas in the past it was, you would listen to both sides and make what you hope was a good decision, an informed decision, but this now gives us a lot more information. The bond reports that Shelby referred to are when, again, someone I think is more chronic in their violations. We will get that bond report violation. Again, a copy goes to the district attorney, a copy goes to the defense attorney. I think the judges maybe handle those somewhat differently. I think all of us, if we see a problem, we'll schedule a hearing. I think our general reaction is for the district attorney to enforce bail violations, per se not the purview of the courts, although we have the authority statutorily to warrant someone if they're violating. But again, they've been extremely useful in saying, okay, this isn't working. And so we'll bring the person in to try and triage it, try to come up with a plan. Phil's staff are in our courtrooms a lot because they give us real-time updates as to how people are doing. If I've got somebody sitting in my courtroom and I say, okay, I'm going to test you today, I've got Tina oftentimes sitting there who'll take them right down, test them then. In the past, people just walked out the door and we never saw them. So the response time, just the collaboration between that department and the courts has exceeded in many ways our expectations the last number of months.
Let me echo what's said there. We're very pleased, I think, as a group of the judges with the results we're getting. I think these outcome measures are very helpful to see. Obviously it's just a snapshot of the people that are being supervised, with drug testing or GPS or something else. But to actually know what's happening is an amazing step forward for us. Now, with a step forward, challenges arise, and I'll give you an example. I think I have one case where I've gotten 10 bond reports for violations. And, people, a lot of people, and I'll speak a little bit as a treatment court judge, a lot of people with addictive problems can't stop drinking or using. And we test them, and to their credit, they show up and test positive, and then, in the past, what would have happened, and probably not the best option, is they've been charged with bail jumping. They'd go into custody again, we'd have another case, and we'd have another, and so the district attorney has sort of evolved his view on those things. But it raises the question of what do you do next, all right? So we have these hearings, and we talk to them, and then they get talked to. Maybe we put a little more cash on them because we want to ensure that they're complying with our bond, but then they do it again and again. And some cases are more serious than others. Some might be medium to high level OWI situations where you're worried about them drinking and driving. All these things, so it's very positive, but it also creates its own challenges of what do we do next. They're referring them to services. I know CARA is providing some services and connectivity to HHS, but I think we might need to look in the future as how do we get to people pre-trial? What can we do to try to get them services at a sooner time to alleviate some of these bond concerns?
If I can just ask one question, Supervisor Phil and Shelby. So what is La Crosse County's budget for pretrial services?
I'm not sure. It's considerable. They have a large staff. I think they quadrupled just their pretrial case managers, which most of their folks are social work certified. They have a little bit of a different model, but it's considerable.
Supervisor Leaf.
Just a great job. I think this is wonderful. It's the sort of data that we're really interested in, and I think, wonderful work. So, thank you.
If I can suggest, I know that there was maybe a supervisor, if not more, was very interested in outcomes.
Yes.
So I don't know if Shelby and Phil could present at a county board meeting, maybe a condensed version of what happened here, because I know there was that question about outcomes and how are we going to measure, how are we going to determine. So that's just a friendly recommendation of the chair that invite them to a county board meeting.
Well, they will have their annual report, so I think that'd be the right time. They'll get a chance.
I think on behalf of all of us, we'll just echo the nice comments that were made by the judge and Supervisor Leaf, and thanks for all the good work you folks are doing. The next item on the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Carlson. I was going to recognize you and I forgot. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. So I'm to understand, because you came on our first board meeting, so I don't know, my first board meeting, so I don't know what happened before. The courts were not getting pre-trial assessments? Okay, yeah, that just surprises me, because that's such a huge thing for the courts.
It was a totally different instrument that was being used. It was a compass assessment, which required interviews of people in the jail. It was extremely time-consuming and represented challenges then with people in the jail. So about the time that Phil came on board, we were transitioning to this pretrial assessment tool, which is, again, no interview. It's all evidence-based, based on what they're able to glean from records and other information. So we were getting them, but now we have a matrix. You know, if you score here, this should be the outcome. Whereas with the compass, it was, this is your risk, and judges figure it out.
Oh, that's good to hear, because it seems to me an important place to use our resources and get a lot of bang for the buck. So good job.
Say one last thing I forgot to mention is, you know, our purpose at a bail hearing or initial appearance is largely, when we're setting bail, to do what we can to ensure they return to court. Okay, that's why the failure to appear is what we're judging. And in the past, we didn't even have reliable information on how many times did they miss court in other cases. I mean, the DA might tell us if they knew, and the defense attorney probably wouldn't tell us if they knew. Who knows? I mean, but now they're providing that information for the people they assess. They look it up and they say, okay, they missed court 5 times in the last year. Well, that's going to inform our thinking pretty significantly. So that's just one thing that's very big difference for us.
Yeah, the Justice Support Services Department is a new department we created about 14 months ago. And so they've been evolving, and as Judge Needham pointed out, he's happy with the recent progress. So.
Well, in the news, you hear complaints of judges that they had 5 times they didn't show up, and then the judge releases them. And sounds like in the past here that could happen. You wouldn't even know. So this would prevent those kind of, and keep us out of the news if something bad happens to someone that doesn't show up. So it's good.
Next, just before I turn to our medical examiner, I just want to add that I think Phil Golly had sent out a notice to all the supervisors about a treatment court graduation next Wednesday. So for those of you who haven't been to one of those before, they're quite inspirational, and I would recommend it. I think the next one is scheduled for 9:30, and I think it's a catch-up on those folks who graduated during the COVID times, who are now being more formally recognized for their good efforts in the treatment court process.
Chair Fuller.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't mean to interrupt. Accept my apologies. I've got a 9 o'clock on the incident this last weekend with the district attorney. So, Patty, my apologies for missing the next.
And Patty, I think you've got the next 3 items on the agenda, so we won't call on them separately. You can just flow from one to the next.
Well, I just want to kind of tag on to what we were just talking about with Justice Support Services. We're seeing at-home deaths where alcohol is a huge indicator, as far as a .374 for folks that die at home and have a history of chronic alcoholism. So alcoholism is really impacting what's going on in our county. To update what we've been doing, we are really have drilled down our process for child death review with public health. We are required to do that by statute. We are in the process of reviewing 16 deaths of persons between 1 and 25 and 6 deaths of 0-1 to 1 years old. What 0-1 means is stillbirth. So we do have, we had 5 of these deaths in May. So there is, we're working with public health and our local medical groups to see why we have this influx. We had 2 bodies that went unclaimed, 2 scene responses. One, after about 6 weeks of diligent tracking down, I was able to find a relative on hospice who has claimed one of our decedents, so that remains will be shipped up to their home, and the decedent will be buried next to her mother. The other one, I'm just in the process of working with the Mexican consulate and folks down in Fort Worth, Texas, for the second decedent. So that too took quite a while. We got the toxicology just back, so we'll be able to send that decedent's remains back to their family. One of the things that we are seeing now that is unusual is if you think about our elderly here in St. Croix County, they are transported out of the county for health care, fractures, whatever, and then transported back to the county. We have now had 3 cases where the decedents, the persons were being transferred back. They died en route, and it was not reported to either us or law enforcement. And we ultimately are the ones that have to sign the death certificate. So I am in contact with Corp Counsel and the Sheriff's Office on this and how we want this handled. They're not even being transferred to hospitals. One was a direct transfer to the funeral home. Which we didn't find out anything till after it was all done. So this is a real issue, and as we have our aging population and multiple out-of-county agencies, these were all out-of-county agencies that came into St. Croix County. We have the 94 corridor, so that is why this is becoming an issue, and we're trying to figure out how to reach out to our facilities on how to handle this. Our facilities are not required to receive decedents. That's not what they're there for. That is what hospitals and ERs are for, but this is not happening right now, so it does pose a problem for us. Moving on to the Forensic Center, I wanted you each to see the presentation on the Forensic Center for Marathon County. If you look at that, you will see that comes with a $10 million price tag. Here in St. Croix County, we did a far more innovative and a much more fiscally responsible attempt at forensics, and right now, because of what we're doing here in St. Croix County, once we get everything and Jim does his part of the building, you will see that we are going to be one of the prime locations for forensics on the western side of the state, and we already have, you'll look at, when you read the report, Wausau built their forensic center, and they don't even have a pathologist. We have pathologists that are reaching out to us that want to rent our space to do forensic autopsies in collaboration with our CAT scan machines. So this is really putting us in the forefront, and then also setting us up, St. Croix County, for the ability to really have a revenue generating business plan. So we're already moving forward to what the next step will look like. So I want to thank Public Protection and the County Board for being innovative and really trusting me with 21st century forensics. Also, moving on to the unnatural deaths, I had the opportunity to have intern look at some of our data when it comes to our unnatural deaths. You'll see her presentation in here. The big takeaway here was really the impulsivity of what's going on with our unnatural deaths, both accidental and suicide. With suicide, you'll see that most of our cases did not have notes. Really talks to you about, that crisis situation and that feeling of impending doom and no way out, and making a really impulsive decision by ending their life. So this here data, actually, we worked with public health to, look at this and then start, figuring out plans on how we're going to talk to folks about mental health just based on what we have. So we were very, very satisfied with our intern, and I think next year we'll probably, if there are other agencies that are looking for someone to do a deep dive, this here program, the Northwest Wisconsin Area Health Education Center, they are looking for more places to set in their interns. These are all UW system and U of M system junior and seniors that are in public health, that they are there to do a project. It's fully funded. I had my intern for 6 weeks, 40 hours a week, and all she did was do a deep dive in all our data, put up set us up with an Excel spreadsheet, and then come up with the presentation for us. And there was a lot of different organizations, county, and it's all for countywide organizations in Northwest Wisconsin that was able to take advantage of this. So if anyone is interested next year in getting on the list, let me know, because this was really, really good stuff. And for all of us that are, struggling with staff, to be able to have this information and take our information and have someone to drill down on it was really, really good. So, and with that, that's all I got. Our numbers are comparable to last year, so we're, plugging along.
Questions for the medical examiner?
So the other benefit, I think, of that program with the intern is building the bench for future employment in this area, because people in your business, you need more people that do the work you do.
Well, it was interesting to see. We had med school students, we had public health students, we had social workers. So these are all young people who are looking to come into public health and into these organizations and already have a passion for it. So it is a really, really good way to make those connections ahead of time.
I'd just say to our medical examiner that she works in a very difficult area with mostly bad news, but she's always got some positive news for us, and particularly on the forensic center and the potential future for that. We certainly appreciate all your creative work and eye on the budget on that. That's for sure, because I know you do that every day. Mr. Ellsbury.
Just got a dovetail on Patty's report. Chris wanted to be here, the project manager.
Well, I was going to say that's our last item on the agenda, and I was about to call on you.
Oh.
So you're called on.
So Chris wanted to be here. Unfortunately, he's got a project meeting for Patty's project. Go figure. I recently have been in touch with 5 other counties close by and a couple on the other side of the state that when we're getting responses to bids, they're getting 1 bid, maybe no bids from contractors to do work. It's crazy. Usually public, we get a lot of good bids because they know we're set and the dollars are there to carry them forward. When we did some of the work up at the nursing home, or excuse me, at the ME's office, we found that a couple of our bids came in higher, and we're tracking about 10% over what we initially thought would be for the cost of getting it done. Some of the items that came up after the fact, after we got going, was the scanner needed to have a little bit more precise humidity dehumidification controls. That was not specified originally. And then the transformer needed to be upgraded, which again was not part of our initial look. We heard from our electrical contractors and suppliers that we were fine, but when we got going and got the information back, it was different. So we go with best case scenario, right? The other one that added on was we had to trench and do some work on drains and plumbing. We knew the coolers were coming, so we added in the in-floor drains that we needed to tie in. If we're tearing the place up, let's do it once, not twice. So I remember when Patty was this high, and she was in an office down here that's now a quiet room, and she's taking over half a building now. And I'm retiring, so she's going to end here with me, but I pity the next person that has, because it just keeps going. So, long story short, we're doing all we can. We've done a lot of the work in-house to keep the costs down. some of the stuff we just couldn't do. So anyway, long story short, that's where we are, and next time Chris will be here.
And when is the expectation when everything will be fully completed?
I think we should be done by the end of the month, end of August. We were able to buy, it's great news, we were able to buy a couple x-ray doors from a hospital that was doing a renovation. So we were able to save a lot of dollars on that. We had to buy the frames, but that's okay, the doors are expensive. So we've got those in, we're waiting for a couple more doors to come in, and then we'll be set. So by the end of the month, we should be done. And then we got to get the scanner in, and that's all on her, so.
What?
Oh, yeah. They're your vendor. You signed that PO.
Are there any questions for Mr. Ellsbury? Well, Jim, we'll be able to say goodbye to you several times in the future, but we always appreciate your coming in and the humor you bring to your presentations as well.
Well, thanks, Bob.
We've also got any questions from, or thoughts from our other folks that are here with us who aren't formally on the program? I know we're maybe not supposed to do that in some ways, but is there anything that's urgent that we hear about?
The only thing I'd like to announce is it's Child Support Awareness Month, and we have things posted out in our lobby and on our window, just fun facts.
Thank you. I think that's a good thing to have brought to our attention. That's right. And we'll make that an announcement. That's right. Let's see. Oh, and I was also going to just say, kind of by way of a half announcement, but I don't have all my facts in place. I noticed the other day that one of our supervisors on this committee was featured in the local paper for his excellent work with the Hudson Fire Department, our Supervisor Adams. And just want to bring to our attention that that isn't that great that we have folks on the committee that are so active in so many parts of their community, including areas that are directly impacting on public protection, and can bring that expertise to this committee. So thank you, Supervisor Adams, for all the work you do for Hudson in that area. Are there any other announcements, correspondence? Oh, I'm sorry, Christy. I went over you too quickly.
That's fine. Good morning, everybody. Couple quick updates. We're still working on our new software that we received at the end of June, so staff are learning to master that. We did lose another individual to the Sheriff's Department, so we are short-staffed that way and have one on maternity leave. So again, we're facing less stress as far as staffing, but still some challenges. The building project, I have some concerns about my remote storage area and being able to, where those files are going to be located as the project continues. I know that the Chief Judge Needham is in contact with Chief Judge Boyle of the district, and she does need to sign off on any changes. We have a significant presence down there, and I have a real big concern on where those items are going to be stored. Hopefully we'll be able to come up with a resolution that will satisfy both sides sooner rather than later. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. I know that's been a big issue for you, and working toward resolution of it, and we appreciate all the efforts in that regard, because it's amazing what an extraordinarily expensive item in the new building is simply scanning documents and getting prepared for the life after 2024 in the building with the latest technology, but also preserving necessary records. Any other announcements or correspondence? Janet? Nothing? With that, we'll meet next on September 1st. And with that, we're adjourned.